While we're waiting, is there anything people want to hear specifically on today's call? I obviously have a deck that I'll go through, but want to make this as interactive as possible. So if people either want to chat or type, yeah, either come off mute or just type into the chat specifically if there's anything you want me to do a double click on, I'm more than happy to, you know, uh, talk about that. And for the folks that are joining now, welcome. We had some folks joining a little bit early, and so just kind of an icebreaker, just understanding where is everyone calling from. Feel free to type it into the chat. Oh, another London. Excellent. DC, great. Welcome. Actually, you think about it, we should probably get started. So this is the second time that I've been doing this, and the first time we actually did go a little bit over because of people's questions. And so if it's okay with everyone, we'll get started, okay? And thank you so much for entering kind of where you're calling from. So again, welcome everyone. My name is Albert Chan, and I'm hosting this session called Resume Interview Strategies to get into big tech. This is roughly a 45-minute session. I can definitely go over a little bit, and the way that I'm thinking about this is I'll do the presentation and then save the questions to the end, right? If you want to chat it, please feel free to type it into the chat and I'll address it afterwards, okay? Unless there's a burning question, people want to kind of come off mute, feel free to do that. Otherwise, let's try to save the questions to the very end, okay? And if anyone is not on mute, if you could all go on mute, just so that we can make sure everything is clear on my end. Okay, great. So what you'll notice actually, before I forget, is the slides will actually be a little bit meaty. There will be a lot of words because I want to make sure that once the session is over, I will send you this deck and that you can refer back to it. Okay. Wordy slides is not my style, but I wanted to make sure that all of you had this playbook afterwards. Okay. So let's begin. Let's see. Is this making sure folks can see? You all can see my screen still, right? It says agenda. Perfect. Okay. So here's what I want to cover today. A few things, right? One obviously is around the resume. Second is around the interview. Want to give you just a very high level framework by Jim Collins. So it's kind of a modified Ikigai framework on how to think about finding your ideal role, company, etc. And then this wasn't, I don't think, included originally, but I wanted to also provide a couple of bonuses. One is around some LinkedIn tips and tricks. And then second is for you to understand how you can get a personalized resume analysis from me in a one-on-one coaching session, right? That's complimentary, okay? And then I'll open it for Q&A, okay? So a little bit about me before we get into the meat of things. So that is my family. It's a couple years old, but I have two kids, Victor and Elia, teenagers. Sheila and I have been married for over 20 years now. She works at Nintendo, so she's like the fun parent, and usually people are more impressed with her than with the company that I've worked at. The bottom are the logos that I've have for my professional and my educational kind of background. So I started my career at Procter Gamble, did that for about 10 years in both the sales and marketing capacity. Then I went to Google, did that for about 8 years, and wanted to do a complete switch again and did a startup where I was the chief revenue officer at Ticker. Realized that wasn't for me, came back to big tech about 3 years ago, and that's where I am now. So I currently oversee our sales teams here in North America. I went to undergrad at Indiana University and then did my executive kind of business MBA at Harvard Business School. So that's a little bit about me, and let's kind of jump right in. Okay, so again, these slides are going to be a little bit meaty, but I want to make sure that again you have this as reference. Okay, so I'll go through these bullet points, and again, if there are questions, feel free to put into the chat. And we'll try to answer it, at the end. Okay. So the first and the kind of the core of this talk today is really about the resume and how can you craft a standout resume that resonates with tech. Okay. And this is my experiences at Google and at Meta. Okay. And so the resume, as many of you know, and this is just kind of a refresher, it is a marketing tool, right? It is not your life history. And the average resume gets looked at for about 7 seconds or so. And so you really want to make sure that you hit the recruiter, the hiring manager, like very, very immediately to the point, demonstrate your value and your fit for that role. And even before you get to that level, a lot of companies, especially if you're submitting this electronically, it must pass the ATS, the applicant tracking system, okay? Because that will weed out over 90% of online resume submissions, okay? So what I wanna share with you today are some of the things that will hopefully set you up for success and not confuse the ATS. And what I mean by that is a lot of people will spend a lot of time making their resume look really pretty, right? A lot of different columns, colors, photos, etc. That actually confuses the ATS. The ATS is an archaic type of software. It does get updated, right? But the best way to not confuse the ATS so that it can really see your background, your fit, etc., is to have very, very boring resumes. And I'll share with you my resume later so you can see what I mean by that. Okay. There's no harm to create two resumes where you have kind of the boring one that you're submitting through ATS. And if you feel that you want to create a nice, pretty one to hand to the recruiter or the hiring manager during the live interview, more than happy to do that. All right. Feel free to do that. Okay. But for the ATS itself, it needs to be very to the point words and in rows, okay, not in columns. Okay, and again, I'll explain what that means here in a minute. Okay, so some key areas that your resume must have. Okay, obviously a contact information, keeping it very professional and accurate. Again, I'll share with you what mine looks like, but things like your email address, your LinkedIn URL, etc. Okay. Summary and profile. Okay. This section is sort of like your TLDR. Okay. It's, 3 to 5 sentences. Spend a lot of time here. Okay. Because this is where this should really summarize what your entire resume is about. A lot of resumes that I've seen over the past 20 plus years, this section gets a little less love than what it should from the actual person making the resume. A lot of times I see people just putting skill sets only, when in reality, you should really bring yourself out a lot more here. Okay. Talk about the companies you've worked for, the things that you do outside of work, right? People management skills, et cetera. Okay. And again, we'll kind of go into a little bit deeper. Just want to give you this high level first. Okay. When you talk about your experiences, follow this method, either the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, and results, or what P&G uses is the CAR method, context, action, and results. Okay. Point being is it must show some sort of tangible impact so that you're able to demonstrate some sort of value that you've contributed to the companies you've worked for so that the future companies that you're applying for will know the type of value that you deliver. Okay. And then of course, tailor, to your job description. If there are certain experiences that you want to highlight based off of a certain role. So let's say you're applying for a sales role, Your resume can look the same. It's just you're highlighting different things, different projects, different results versus if you were apply for like a marketing role for that exact same company. Okay. Education, of course, feel free to list your degrees, but there has been some research that shows do not include your graduation date because that does lead to some people having ageism bias. Either you're too young or you're too old. Okay. So, in full transparency, wanted to share with you what my resume looks like. Okay, here's what it is. Like I said, it's very, very boring, right? It is black and white, no columns, pretty much just bullet points and lines. And this is what the ATS has been kind of like quote unquote trained to look at. Okay, so I'll go through this in a little bit more detail. Okay, so if we look at some of the attributes and features that I called out in the 2 slides ago, you can see what I've done it here as well. Okay. First one is contact information, professional, accurate, very simple, phone number, email, LinkedIn URL. Okay. Summary profile. Again, this is, if you read this, you would be like, ah, yes, this is Albert, right? Because I talk about years of experience, companies I've worked at, things I do outside of work, etc. Many times, again, people will just list skill sets, and you won't know if this is John or Mary, right? And who that is. Okay, wasted opportunity. Okay, feel free to kind of blow this out. Again, 3 to 5 sentences, but this is probably where most of the people that are looking at your resume will actually read, and everything else they kind of skim. Okay, and so most, if not all of my bullet points have some sort of STAR method, right? Or some sort of tangible, quantifiable contribution, okay? So definitely want to focus on that, focus on the impact. And kind of a little hint is if you do a control find or control F, find and document, what you want to try to minimize is using the same words, especially the same action verbs over and over again, okay? There's kind of this rule of thumb of having it no more than 3 times, okay? So if you do that, I even fell in this kind of this trap of using lead, strategy, et cetera, more than 3 times. You should probably change it up just so that it reads a little bit easier for the recruiter and the hiring manager, okay? There is no harm in having more than 1 page, by the way, before I get into this, okay? So if you have more than 10 years of experience, in a way, it's kind of expected that you have 2-page resumes, okay? If you have under 10 years of experience, probably 1 page is more appropriate. Never, ever is it really appropriate to have 3 pages, okay? Again, you're not telling your life story. You want to be very choiceful in what you put on here. 2 pages for 10 years and more, 10 years and fewer, probably 1-page resumes make the most sense, okay? Of course, like I said, tailor what you highlight to the job that you're applying for. As you can see, most of the roles that I apply for tend to be sales and marketing, primarily sales. So a lot of my examples are more sales related. Education, as you can see, I don't highlight my year of graduation. And then on the bottom, okay, this is where you would add recognition, skill sets, etc. This is all optional, okay, unless you're applying for a technical role. If you're applying for a commercial role, so let's say sales, marketing, finance, etc., you don't really need to put your technical skill sets or certifications, okay? But if you're applying for like engineers or any sort of like more technical that does require some sort of certification, that's where you would put it. Okay, it's optional. I'm saying you shouldn't put it if you're applying for sales and marketing. It's just not necessary. Okay, and some of you may have seen on social media, some people will like take the job rec, put everything in white font, really, really small, and put it on their resume. So that they can hope that the ATS will then show that, oh, they're capturing all the right keywords. Just know that that is not true. And if anything, the ATS like updates and stuff will probably catch it, and it's also unethical. Okay, so definitely do not recommend that, but you may have seen that on social media as a tips and tricks to do. Just know that it does not work, and I highly, highly do not subscribe or advise to do that. Okay. I want to share with you a tool out there that I think is pretty good for you to kind of think about, right, on how you can potentially get additional input leveraging AI. Okay. So there is a tool by Google called Notebook LM. Okay. And so you can definitely upload your resume into Notebook LM. And what's unique about Notebook LM is they actually have a feature now where it's like a podcast. It has two people talking about the topic that you've uploaded. In this case, it's your resume, but you can also raise your hand and ask it a question. Okay, so let me share with you what I mean by that. Hopefully, you can hear the audio. So, are you able to see this new screen? It should be a dark screen.
Yes.
Thank you so much for confirming that. So let me just kind of blow it up a little bit here. So I'm going to hit play, and you can kind of see where it goes, and then I'll hit this join button to kind of be part of the conversation. Okay, so let's listen to this for a minute. Oh, hold on. Let me refresh this here because I did it this morning. It said it needed a little bit of time. Let's see.
Welcome to today's deep dive, and we're trying something a little different today.
Oh.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at just a single document this time.
Huh. Okay.
It's Albert Chan's resume,
Interesting.
and we're going to be trying to kind of glean all these little insights that you can apply.
Oh, wait. Someone wants to join. Hey, go for it.
Hi, how would I update and improve the profile section on Albert's resume?
Hi, that's a great question.
Yeah, that's super useful for everyone listening.
Okay, let's unpack this. A strong profile section is key.
Right. First impressions matter, even on a resume.
Exactly. So looking at Albert's, it's already pretty good,
Yeah, it's got some strong points.
but we can always make it better.
So what stands out to you?
Well, it highlights his experience and achievements.
Yeah, he's worked at some big name companies.
What's fast?
Okay, so hopefully folks kind of get a flavor of what that can do. Okay, again, this is just another resource to get another type of input on your resume, right, and how to improve it. Okay, later on I'll talk about how I can help you do a one-on-one analysis as well. But in the kind of meantime, if you want to leverage AI, Notebook LM is free to use if you choose to do that. Okay. Now, I want to transition now to the interview portion. Okay, so let's say you now have a really solid resume, has all those key components. Now you've gotten the interview. Let's talk about what that looks like. Okay, so typically in tech, there are these different rounds of interviews and processes that are very similar. It doesn't matter if it's Google or Amazon or Meta, right? Usually it's you submit it through ATS online, unless you have a referral. Okay, if you have a referral, you kind of like bypass the ATS system. Okay, the recruiter will look at it, and if it's good, the recruiter will then set up a screening call. Okay, then after that, pass it on to the hiring manager for a one-on-one interview. If that goes well, then you'll kind of go in what they call the loop. You'll have 2 to 3 interviews with different multifunctionals, and they tend to be more behavioral type of questions. Okay, and really the entire time, it's really about finding the right type of fit, both functionally, technically, and culturally. Okay, and so again, like the purpose really here is to understand the examples that you share are past behaviors used as a predictor for future performance. Okay. And we'll talk about some of the key themes and buckets of where these questions kind of come from and stem from. Okay. No surprise, you should probably answer your interview questions with the type of STAR method or the CAR method, okay, context, action, results, because again, people want to know your contribution and be able to quantify it. Okay. Think out loud. This is actually a very common mistake for people that don't interview in tech. In tech, we actually want to hear your thought process. We want to understand how are you connecting the dots to get to the answer. It might not be quote unquote the right answer, but we want to understand your thought process. So, right. So if you do have questions that are like, how would you handle this situation? It does not hurt to come up with like your answer, but then also kind of show your work, right? Quote unquote, show your work during and showing your thought process. Sorry, got a little distracted there. Here are some common themes, okay, that you will probably see when the questions come up, okay? So these are the topics around leadership, collaboration, problem solving, role-specific skill sets, product knowledge, and company values and mission. When it comes to leadership, what they're really looking for is, can you obviously lead others, but then can you also lead without authority, okay? Not everyone has opportunities to manage teams. Doesn't matter. Can you lead maybe your peer sets, people that don't report into you? How do you get their skin in the game, right, and lead without authority? Collaboration. How well do you work with others? How do you manage conflict? And how can you demonstrate that at times you may not get your way, but how do you disagree and commit? Okay, so those are some key areas around collaboration. Problem solving, this is really about how did you convert insights into action, and really what were some of the kind of the whys behind your decision, right? What did you learn from it, et cetera, okay? And then role-specific skills, right? This is really about demonstrating some sort of expertise in your field, okay? So you'll probably get one or two questions that are like related to sales if you're applying for a sales job, right? Product management for PM jobs, et cetera, okay? And then if you're applying to any of these tech companies, they're going to want to know, do you have a basic understanding of the products and the services that they make their revenue from? Okay, obviously at Google, it's going to be not just SEO, but SEM, YouTube, apps, et cetera, right? Cloud, et cetera. Do you know, like kind of like at a high level, right? How do they all interact? How do they bring revenue for Google, et cetera? Okay. And then finally, it's around company values and mission, right? Really discuss how your values and mission kind of aligns with their companies. Okay. And so those are some things to be prepared for. Now, if you want to prepare for this, here is something that I would recommend, right? This little framework here, this grid that you can easily put together that shows, hey, here are the 4 questions or 4 topics that are related to like my behavioral or past experiences, okay? And just list out in the star, right, like one-liners, right, to kind of like jot your notes in your memory. You really only need 1 or 2 examples for each, right? And there is this misconception that if you use one answer for one interviewer, you can't use it for the other one. That is not true. You can definitely do that. They just want to know, how well are you answering the question? Okay, they don't care if you use the same one over and over again. You probably don't want to do it, for everyone, for every question. But if you reuse it from one interviewer to another one, that is totally okay, as long as you believe that is the best answer, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what these tech companies, when I interview for folks, we're looking for is, we throw out a question, we're looking for these type of skill sets. Did this person answer that question the best? Okay, we don't care if you delivered $5,000 or $50 million. We don't care, right? Did you demonstrate the skill sets that we're looking for with your best answer? And if you think your answer 1 can be applied for leadership and for problem solving, feel free to go ahead and use it. Okay. Each interviewer, by the way, will probably have a different skill set that they're looking for. So I might be looking for leadership and collaboration. My peer might look for problem solving and role specific skills, et cetera. Okay. Want to quickly share with you, there's also OpenAI, right? You can also ask this AI for role playing as well. In the spirit of time, I'll kind of go through this pretty quickly. I won't share the entire video, but you can see this is another tool out there at your fingertips that you can leverage to help you prepare for the interview.
Hey, so guess what? I've got a huge interview coming up, and I really would love your help preparing for it.
That's fantastic news. I'd be thrilled to help you get ready. What's the interview for, and how can we start preparing?
It's a software engineering role, and I was thinking you could do kind of a rapid fire mock interview, maybe ask me 3 questions, and at the end, you can give me some feedback.
Great idea. Let's dive straight in. First question. Can you tell me about a challenging technical problem you solved in your previous projects and how you approached it?
So hopefully you get kind of the gist of it, okay?
Hey.
Cool. In the spirit of time, I will also go through this one relatively quickly. Usually when I do coaching with my students and clients, we spend a little bit more time on this, but I promised that I would share with you with this hedgehog framework, which is a modified Ikigai framework from Japan. The only difference between the hedgehog framework from Jim Collins versus the Ikigai framework is the Ikigai framework has a 4th circle in this Venn diagram on what does the world need, okay? But in this case, this is more about self-awareness and self-acceptance, really understanding what really drives you extrinsically and intrinsically, and then what are you good at? Doing that exercise seems like a no-brainer, but a lot of people don't do it, right? But what this enables you to realize are the things and the companies and the roles that you really, can get a whole lot more out of it, and that you're not just chasing any sort of job or company, whatever, right? That you're really being more purposeful, right? This framework, again, if you want to learn more, we can definitely spend some more time on it, but just want to throw that out there and with some of the key question prompts for you to use after this session so that you can kind of ask yourself to hopefully give you a little bit more clearer direction on where you want to go in your career, okay? Other useful tips, right? I just want to kind of throw out there that I just thought of over time. Number one is if you do have a dream kind of company list, keep it to 5 max, okay? Because you're going to spend a lot of time doing research on them, following them on LinkedIn, et cetera, right? So don't go crazy. Use the 5, right? Pick the 5 wisely, okay? Obviously, if you have a referral, leverage a referral, right? Your referral success rate of being hired is much higher than cold calling, cold emailing, okay, cold outreaches. In today's kind of economy and also the environment, you do have to cold outreach. I know it's not fun. The success rate, like I mentioned, is really low. It's a numbers game. You have to do it. So on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see I put together a little framework and also an example of what a good outreach and also a good cover letter can look like, okay? Basically, the way it reads is introduction about who you are, what value add, what opportunity have you identified, right, through your research, and then asking them to set up time for you to walk them through that opportunity, and hopefully have a networking, kind of connection that way, okay? I find this 3-step framework for outreaches and cover letters to be much more impactful than someone reaching out aimlessly on, LinkedIn, or through an email, or, et cetera, okay? So definitely people wanna know who you are, what value can you add, and then hopefully you can be, asking for a meetup, a video conference, or whatever that is, okay? Cover letters don't do as much as some people think they do, okay? Spend time on them, don't spend too much time. Again, you can leverage this framework, you can leverage AI to help you write it. Over the past 20 plus years that I've done interviews and seen candidates, I've probably interviewed over 100. I've maybe have seen, 5 or 6 cover letters, kind of in my inbox on my desk. Usually it's just the resume. Okay. Send personalized thank you emails and letters. It definitely makes a huge difference. Connect with them on LinkedIn, follow up periodically, even if you don't get the job. When I interviewed for Procter Gamble, I didn't get 2 of the jobs I interviewed for, but I kept in touch with the interviewers, asked them what I needed to work on, and I did. I went back and then kind of sealed up some of those weak areas of mine, and I got the job right after 2 call it quote unquote failed interviews. Okay. And of course, the last one is don't take rejections personally. I know it's hard, especially in the moment, right? There are many factors that kind of go into the decision that are out of your control. And then finally, if you have LinkedIn, which I hope many of you, if not all of you, do, here's just some key things to leverage. Okay, the first one is having a very strong visual headshot cover letter, right? I don't want to see photos of someone's dog, right? Or you in sunglasses on the beach, right? That's cool, like maybe on like social media or Facebook, right? But on LinkedIn, you want to have a nice professional headshot. Your background ideally has like a really strong banner. It's also good real estate for you to talk about what value you can bring. Okay, I tend to focus more on AI, and so I have a AI focus there. And then if you don't have LinkedIn Premium, I would highly recommend that you do, especially if you're job searching. Okay, just because it does allow you to reach out to the people a little bit more than if you didn't. If you use the free version, you're limited to the number of outreaches you can do. The about section, this is where you want to spend a lot of time on. Okay, this is where you don't just spend like 7 or 10 seconds, right? The person who comes to your LinkedIn page will probably read through most of it. Okay, so spend a lot of time here. If you were to expand mine, it's pretty long. Okay, so definitely do that. Spend some time on figuring out what are your top skills, because that will actually be reflected on what type of jobs that get surfaced, where does your LinkedIn profile show up, et cetera. One thing I forgot to mention is if you do click the open to job opportunities tab on LinkedIn, you can actually do it where you're actively or passively looking. If you want to click passively, then recruiters will definitely still see it, and you won't have like that green, um, I guess, like banner on your picture that says you're actively looking, right, for a job, right? You can still do it passively, and you still show up on recruiters' lists. So highly recommend you do that as well. Be very active on LinkedIn, right? Post often, comment, message frequently, etc. Show some sort of engagement and passion for those 5 top companies. Network to people, reach out to people in those companies and those roles, etc. Okay, that really makes a difference. Okay, and with that, one other bonus is if you are interested in me analyzing your resume, feel free to sign up for a free intro call. Right, it's complimentary, and I can analyze. I can help with coaching, etc. Right, I have many students that want continuous coaching outside of that, so feel free to do that as well. Happy to look at your resume, give you some feedback, connect you to some people in my network, etc. Okay, and with that, I'll open up to questions. Hopefully folks have questions. Hopefully folks can hear me. I wasn't just talking for like an hour by myself. I'm sorry, does someone have a question?
I have a
Yes,
quick
I do.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'll go ahead since I'm not hearing anything else. I was just curious. I know you had said that sending an email after each step of the interview round. Do you recommend also emailing the recruiter as well as the second and the third?
Yeah, absolutely. So Many times the interviewers won't give you their email address for privacy or security reasons or whatever, right? Some do, right? But sometimes the companies are advising the recruiter or the people that are interviewing in the loop not to. And so if that's the case, then you would probably need to submit it to the recruiter and say, hey, do you mind passing this on to Joe, whatever, right? The interviewer. I would do it that way. You don't have to thank the recruiter every single time. I think after the screening, definitely send the recruiter a note, but then send the individual notes after each interview, either directly or to the recruiter who will pass it on.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Can I ask a very particular question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have an interview with a big tech company about a month ago, but then I didn't go through the rest of the interview after the phone screening, and then after that I never reached out to the hiring manager. So after hearing a presentation, I'm thinking to outreach back to the hiring manager. So how can I pick up my conversation here after a month of the interview?
Yeah. I mean, just say like, you don't have to go into detail of like why you chose not to reach out. Be like, hey, just wanted to follow up, and just kind of leave it at that, right? Like if you want to share that there may have been some like personal reasons, right? And apologies for the delay, but I think if you just get straight to the point of like, hey, just want to follow up, from our last conversation, I don't think people would take any offense to it.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you. And by the way, thanks for your time tonight.
Yeah, totally. What else?
Hey, Albert. Max Sabat, Senior Brand Manager for P&Gs. So it was great hearing your experience, and also thanks for doing this. My question was more so around kind of the tell me about a time when you failed type interview question. So for that, would you recommend kind of like let's say, for example, have a consumer insight, have a product that we're going to launch, sell it in with all these retailers, and then it flops? Here's the actions we took, and then ultimately how we still delivered on the business objectives? Or would you recommend focusing more on like a personal development thing that you worked on that maybe necessarily didn't go to plan?
Yeah. So I think the personal development and what you learned is the above and beyond that differentiates you from everyone else, right? Because I feel like most people are prepared to hear, okay, we pivoted, here's the contingency, and we made it, right? I think that's cool, right? But at the same time, if you can say like, either you can like surprise them of, hey, we pivoted and it failed even worse or whatever, right? But this is what I learned, right? So I think what you learned, what you developed, is the cherry on top, right? There's actually the more memorable ones of people that I've interviewed over the last 20 years are the ones who proactively come to like in the interview, come to me with like, tough situation, but I learned this, right? And that's why I would be a good fit or whatever, right? So they tie it back to the job requisites, right, of what we're looking for. And interestingly, more and more questions these days also tend to be like, okay, cool, but what did you learn from this, right? It's not necessarily required within like the tech companies. Like we don't have a question that says like, what did this candidate learn? But I have found the longer I've interviewed, more of the senior people tend to want to understand what did you learn from this experience? So yeah, so Max, long story short, the way you're thinking about it is great. What you learn, development areas, the cherry on top.
Super clear. Thank you.
Cool. Srinivasa, I think you're next.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it okay to connect to the hiring manager through LinkedIn if I know who the hiring manager is?
Yeah.
I'm asking, is it okay to connect to them before the interview?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a polite response from them is like, hey, looking forward to connecting with you, right? Obviously, the recruiter is dealing with all of that, kind of the process. But yeah, it never hurts, right? For me, it actually shows proactiveness, right? And that you are getting like, you're really scrappy. You somehow found that this is a hiring manager. To me, it's not like stalking or anything, right? It just shows that you're hungry, that you really want this. But the way that you connect with them, I would still follow that framework of like intro, value add, and then ask for the next step or whatever, versus being like, hey, I'm Albert, looking forward to chatting with you tomorrow, whatever. Like that doesn't add too much value in my inbox.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Wenji?
Yes, thank you, Albert. Thank you for your presentation. Yeah, similar to the previous question. Yeah, recently I do looking for new opportunities, and I try to connect with hiring managers, like either hiring managers or recruiters through LinkedIn. But I realize sometimes I question myself because I somehow like the message I sent it out through the connecting message to the hiring manager is very similar to the format you just showcased in the example, but I rarely hear back from them. I'm not even sure they even read my message at all. Maybe they have tons of stuff in their inbox, so they did literally skip them. So far, based on all the message I send out, I only hear a couple back, and they are recruiters instead of the hiring manager.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, like, is that still worth to do so? And also, if I do need to pick, do I need to reach out to the recruiter versus hiring manager? Because like checking message will be recruiters kind of like a daily duty versus hiring manager maybe more busy.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, like I mentioned, it's a numbers game, right? And you want to find as much differentiation between you and the other candidates, right? So your success rate is going to be very low, right? Just to be fully transparent, right? It's going to be very low, especially in today's economy when we have, unfortunately, in tech, all these layoffs, right? You're competing against not just people converting into tech, but tech people that have been laid off, right? So it's very competitive. If you don't do it, someone else is doing it, right? And so, yes, while your success rate, your reply rate isn't high, just know that it is making an impact somewhere, right? Even if it's a marginal one, right? So that's what I would say would differentiate you from someone else, right? If I got an email, I didn't have to reply to them, I passed it to a recruiter, that's also a win for you, I feel like, right? But then at the end of the day, if it's like, if I'm picking between two candidates, one person's hungry and reached out, the other one didn't, that factors in, right, into my consideration set. So yeah, do it. Just know your success rate is going to be low, especially in today's environment.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's still worth to do so, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, just keep your expectations, unfortunately, low for the short and midterm at least.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Very
totally.
helpful.
I see we have a comment from Tiffany, but maybe I can answer that first, and then we'll go to Hiraj. If that's okay? So Tiffany, you had a comment around cover letters are amazing for pivoting. Do hiring managers or do the recruiters actually read them? Like I mentioned, I've interviewed over 100 people. I've seen maybe 5 or 6 cover letters. So unfortunately, not really. It's really what kind of gets you in the door is your resume, right? The cover letters are kind of like cool, but not many people will spend too much time reading them. Therefore, don't spend too much time creating them, right? Do it, leverage AI to help you, but I don't think it's as valuable as some people think they are. Okay. To Hiraj?
Hi, Albert. Can you able to hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for having this session. This is really informative. So my question is related to senior candidates. So just an example, I have 20 plus years of experience, and my previous role was as a director. But now, because of the market and all, I would like to go for managerial roles as well. Now, the problem is, if you are applying for managerial role, you are overqualified. So, in that case, do I need to remove some of my previous experiences? Like instead of having 20 years of in the resume within 2 page, I can just say 10 years, or I can still keep it. Means what's the best policy to crack down? Means it's just matter of getting the job. Considering the market, I'm not pulling someone else's job,
Yeah.
but just getting something.
Yeah. That's a tough one. I would not like take away the years of experience, first of all. Um, my suggestion is maybe look at a different, smaller company, so that you're not going after maybe the same company, or larger, right? And in some of these cases. So I had a peer who was at Google. He was a manager. He's now at Amazon as an individual contributor, right? I was surprised that he went that route and got hired because, to your point, he would be overqualified, right? But he knew someone, and that's how he got in, right? So I totally understand, right? I've been told you're overqualified, right? But at the same time, like, I would not reduce my resume or whatever. I would just look for maybe a different company that can truly kind of be a better fit, right? And value. I know it's hard, but I would not necessarily reduce it. But if you want to apply for a manager role, maybe at a different company than what you're applying for, see if that works. Great, but I still say go for director roles, right? If you're a director, go for other director roles, just maybe at different size companies.
Yeah, and that's the another reason. Like it's very subjective. Like some companies count 20
Yes.
20 direct reports as a manager, and
Yes.
some companies count 20 as a just a director or senior manager. So
Yep.
that's also subjective, but again, it's companies own prospect, but having the same content is make more sense, like you said.
Yeah. Like, it's a tough one. Yeah, to your point, like people have their own biases and stuff like that. So that one's a tough one. I will admit. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
It looks like Mark has a question, right? What are some common mistakes that candidates make during an interview? Some red flags that recruiters might be looking for. One of the most common mistakes is you do not follow a star or car method. You just ramble. That makes it really hard for the interviewer to type out kind of the responses. And the reason why that's important is because when we kind of debrief the candidates, part of it is, one of the things is, was that person articulates, right? How can you quantify, how can you compare this candidate to another one? And if the person taking notes is having a difficult time understanding what did you do and what did you deliver, that's a big like red flag. Another red flag is minorities and women tend to focus a lot on we instead of I. There's definitely a balance, but in these interview questions, you can over-index more on I versus we. Because if you start to say, like, we did this, we came up with the strategy, we executed, the interviewer is going to be like, well, are you really a leader? Like, what did you do? Okay. And unfortunately, statistically speaking, minorities, including Chinese Americans like myself, women tend to focus more on we. So my suggestion is focus a little bit more on I. Occasionally throw in the we, right? Because you want to show that you are a good collaborator and team player. But a red flag is also, is this person like not a leader? Okay. Ramesh, and then I'll get into the other comment from Critica.
Hey, Albert, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for the session. I just had a quick question regarding the resume format. So you suggested to keep it simple without too much of flashy kind of formatting onto it to allow for the ATS to read it easily. But at times when we know that we are going through a referral and we know that the resume is directly going to land in front of the hiring manager, so would you suggest to actually use some creative formatting there to kind of impress the recruiter, because the visual appeal obviously has an impact in the eyes of the recruiter? Or do you still suggest to go ahead with the simple format itself?
Honestly, like, I feel like, especially as the recruiter and as the hiring manager gets more and more tenured, I think they care maybe less of that, right? Unless you're going for like a creative role or something, right? So I do feel like the substance of it is probably, a little bit more meaningful, right? But it's up to you. It's personal preference. If you can bypass the ATS, yeah, it's fair game if you want to do it through the boring way like mine, the black and white version, or you can do a pretty version, right? I don't think it's going to make or break your chances of getting an interview or not, or getting the job or not. Honestly, I think it's what you have on it is going to make or break the difference.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Let's see, Criticas, would you recommend reaching out to a startup founders and CPOs directly to ask for an internship, or is it better to first have a conversation about their experience and company? I mean, I think anytime you can connect with a founder, right, or someone at that company, one, I think that's a positive, right? You always want to be able to network, right? Asking for the internship, or is it better to have a first have a conversation about their experience and company? I mean, I think that's probably up to you, like how confident or how knowledgeable are you about that company, right? Like, do you see yourself working there? Right? Kind of going back to the extrinsic, intrinsic, and what are you good at? Is that a place where you want to have the internship, right? I believe it can't hurt to have an internship, right? Especially if you're fresh, out of school and stuff like that. You're seeking for summer internship and someone can give you one, take it, right? I think you'll learn a lot no matter what. But at the same time, if that company's culture, right, and work and stuff doesn't align with kind of like what you are thinking and developing, the number one thing you want to get from an internship, and also maybe the first 10 years of your career, are learning opportunities, right? As much as diverse as possible, right? If they have rotation programs, even better, right? So that you can see, what am I good at? What do I really enjoy doing? I know some companies like General Mills will have like a 6-month rotation, right? You do finance for 6 months, and you do sales, right? Then you go to like a different part of the country or a different, part of the world, right? For some of their leadership developments, right? Those are phenomenal, right? But the point being is you want to get as much diverse experience as possible, either in an internship, in projects, or whatever that is. So kind of indirectly answer your question, but hopefully that helps. Oh, cool, John. You just walked in and asked for a tour, got an interview. Phenomenal. Yeah. Just do what it takes. Differentiation is key. All right. And I think that's a great example. I know we're out of time, folks. Again, I can stay a little bit later, but any other questions folks have?